Hello friends and colleagues, I'm Stanislav Chernog, the author and creator of the Vector Massage School, and today we will talk about the Strelnikova's breathing gymnastics and we will demonstrate it to you. For whom will Strelnikova's breathing gymnastics be useful? Generally, these gymnastics was invented for actors, for those who want to speak in public. If you have some reports, if you are a public person speaking to an audience, or just want to be more convincing in your speech, then I recommend Strelnikova's gymnastics. In addition, it has an extremely positive effect on human health. The fact is that Strelnikova's breathing gymnastics create stress to create an effort on the pulmonary system. The essence of gymnastics, according to Strelnikova, is the restriction of inhalation and accordingly at the same time efforts to produce this inhalation. The movement will limit our inhalation and take it will increase the range of our lungs. This practice will be extremely useful for you if you have chronic colds, if you have asthma, if you have the consequences of bronchitis or pneumonia, any lung diseases. In addition, it has an extremely positive toning effect. After I do it, I feel awake, I feel more fresh and cheerful. I do it on a regular basis almost every day. If I spend a day without Strelnikova's exercises, I feel that the day is not as good as the previous ones. Therefore, these gymnastics will be useful for people who must speak in public. You will notice how your voice will change. It will be useful for you to rehabilitate the state of your pulmonary system or make it more resilient if you live in a polluted climate, bad environment, or if you want to increase your immunity in the sense of cold. And finally, it has a general effect on the body of the person, making you stronger and more energetic and alert. I recommend that you watch this video until the very end, and moreover, in the process of how we will show you this practice and do it with us. How we do gymnastics according to Strelnikova. The basic point is that it is performed on a sharp, fast, energetic breath through the nose. The mastery of this practice is the state when, after you have taken a sharp breath through your nose, you spontaneously exhale through your mouth. How do we achieve this? Our jaws must be open all the time. We strive to perform the movement of inhalation and exhalation as quickly as possible. In order for our jaw not to work at the moment when we perform arbitrary, spontaneous exhalation through the mouth, we keep our mouth constantly open. At the moment of inhalation, in order to block the inhalation through the mouth, you stumble, press the tip of your tongue into the sky. Inhalation occurs with the mouth open, but at the same time you touch the heart plate with your tongue, and thus you do not inhale through the mouth. Your task is to take a breath in a way as if you were sniffing. That is, you rush to inhale through the nose so sharply as if trying to tuck something in. The ideal state of inhalation is one in which your nostrils close. Right here in front of the mirror, when you look, your nostrils seem to stick together. This is the right state. One must strive for it in every possible way. The second important characteristic of inhalation is that this inhalation is carried out through the diaphragm. To begin with, I recommend that you put your hands on the space between the costal arches directly under the xiphoid process here and here if it is possible, and at the moment of inhalation you should feel that your stomach is inflating. Your diaphragm at the moment of tension pushes your hands. It should look like this. The hands should be pushed forward. Accordingly, the breath is carried out spontaneously. You do not control the breath. Your task is to inhale so vigorously and so sharply that at the moment of inhalation the diaphragm tenses and then suddenly relaxes, and this leads to spontaneous exhalation. At first you will not necessarily succeed, but you must remember that this is important and you should strive for this. Strelnikova's movements are divided into several phases. We will go a little further through all these phases and figure out why they are needed, but the fundamentally important point is that you make movement due to the diaphragm and at the same time you compress, reduce the amount of free space in the lungs. This leads to the fact that the exhalation is carried out spontaneously and at the moment of inhalation you work mainly with the diaphragm. How many repetitions should be done when you do Strelnikova's gymnastics? The classic option is when you do the number of repetitions of the power of 2. So you do either 8 repetitions or 16 repetitions, or you do 32 repetitions, or you do 64 repetitions, or 1 to 8 for example. The number of repetitions is not important. The number of repetitions is taken from traditional Oriental practices in which, respectively, the power of 2 is of great importance. You can choose any number of repetitions for yourself, but it is recommended to count and it is recommended to strive to ensure that there is approximately the same number of repetitions for each phase that you perform. What else is important to keep in mind here? You should strive to work in a comfortable mode, especially at the beginning. Your mucous membranes will begin to dry out at the moment of inhalation, especially at the beginning you will feel as if your nose is blocked. This is fine. After some time, these effects will pass, and it is the appearance of these effects that it is the factor that stimulates the body to work on the mucous membranes, so that it improves the secretion of mucus, so that it reduces the swelling of the mucous membranes, so that the body opens the alveoli and contributed to the improvement of the condition of the lungs. A possible option is also a state when you feel dizzy. This is also normal. It is worth stopping after the head is spinning, take a deep, free breath, allow the body to recover from hyperventilation. As a rule, we are in a state of hypoxia, insufficient blood supply. Therefore, at the moment when we give our body enough oxygen, redox processes are launched more intensively, and this often leads to the fact that those toxins that have formed in our body due to insufficient oxygen, these toxins enter the bloodstream, and we may experience discomfort. You shouldn't worry, but don't overdo it. It should be understood that after a while these effects will pass and you will feel alright and natural. Also, after Strelnikov's gymnastics, I do not recommend driving or doing intense physical activity or something that requires concentration, especially after the first time. In the first stages, it will take you 5 to 10 to 15 minutes to completely return to your usual concentrated state, because the practices associated with intensive breathing change our consciousness to some extent. The first basic movement is a movement when you are static with a straight back and perform just a cycling inhalation and spontaneous exhalation. I will show you the phase when there will be 32 inhalations and exhalations. In some cases, this phase is strengthened by the fact that you squeeze your palms. While inhaling, you squeeze your palms, while exhaling, you relax them. Let's do it this way. "32 breaths. The pace that I have shown you does not have to be so fast. I recommend that you do it slower at first, and after a while I will show you a pace that is recommended for beginners. It will be something like this. What is the difference? In the first case, when I work quickly, I have spontaneous exhalation as I strain the diaphragm, and accordingly it rebounds after it is extremely strained. It spontaneously relaxes. If this phase doesn't work out for you, then just don't worry about it. Focus on inhaling and allow yourself to let go of your breath, let go of your stomach, so that the tonic tension of the abdominal muscles leads to exhalation. The next phase will be the head turning phase. It is very important that in this phase you make movements of the correct amplitude. The fact is that a very large number of people have instability of the cervical spine. Accordingly, the moment when you make too sudden movements, there are risks that you will displace the vertebrae that are in an insufficiently stable position. Therefore, at first you take breaths with a small amplitude. How are breaths taken? You turn your head and inhale while turning. Inhalation is carried out at each phase of the turn. You turn your head to the left side, inhaled. Spontaneous exhalation while you turn your head to the other side. You take a breath on the right side, respectively 32 breaths in each direction, 16 times. Exhalations will be carried out in the middle somewhere, so let's start. And here, respectively, 32 inhalations, 32 exhalations. I think some of you will notice that as I do Strelnikova breathing exercises, my voice changes. This is the normal, natural state. Moreover, I have already completed 2 phases and feel a lot more confident and calm. The next phase will be the slope phase. You tilt your heads left and right. Again, the inspiratory phase is carried out in an extreme position. Again, due to the fact that we are talking about the neck, you do these movements gently. You are not in a hurry. We rush in the beginning to fixate on how our diaphragm works, how our nostrils retract, and only at the last step you look at how quickly these movements are carried out. So for what actually we carry out inclinations, turns in different directions. The fact is that when we bend down, our respiratory muscles are in a difficult position, and exactly at the moment when we take an energetic breath in a difficult position, we force the body to discover new resources of the respiratory system, open up reserves, or discover that in some positions breathing occurs to be abnormal and unnatural, and we draw the attention of our body to the problems that exist in our respiratory system. So let's start. And again, 32 times. I recommend that after a certain number of times you have done the practice, you pay attention to how the muscles of your diaphragm tighten, how your stomach is pushed out. The next movement is a forward-backward movement. A forward-backward movement, a small pendulum. I'm not always sure that I counted the correct number of times. This is not fundamental. We need the number of repetitions only so that we roughly understand the dimension of how much we breathe. We respectively had 4 movements for the neck. The first movement, when the head was straight and when we squeezed our hands, turns, tilts left and right, and tilts back and forth. The next movement will be the movement when we will carry out the movement of sequential compression of the chest. We limit the amount of air that is allowed to enter the chest. For the convenience of the record, we will first explain you how to do it, and then we will show you how to do it. You need to join your hands in front of you, turning one hand over the other as if you are trying to hug yourself. Sequentially, first one hand must be on top, then the second hand must be on top. It is important that you understand that the main inhalation takes place in the back chest region, in the space between the shoulder blades and just below the shoulder blades. Let me show you how it will look. And let's do a full circle. Again, we take deep breaths through the nose and spontaneous exhalations through the mouth. The same 32 times. Times, and I can feel how my voice becomes more confident, deeper. This is normal, this is natural, this is what the practice was invented for, and any change in our voice entails that we begin to feel more confident and more calm. The next movement will be a movement in which we do about the same thing, only to this we add a twist. We make a movement of lateral wrapping around ourselves with a simultaneous turn in one direction and then in the other direction. Let's see what it will look like. For a long time, this movement was the most difficult for me. Perhaps your case will be different. Write which of the movements seemed the most pleasant or interesting to you, and which movement caused you the most resistance or difficulty. So let's start. So what exactly is different here? What is the difference between this movement and the previous one? If in the previous movement we had a stretching of the space between the shoulder blades and inhalation took place there, then in this case we make a turn and some inclination to one of the sides, which leads to stretching. Inhalation occurs into the lateral surface. Finally, the next movement will be the movement called pump. You imagine that you have a large pump in your hands and you pump up a certain amount with your body weight, press on the pump handles. Accordingly, inhalation will be carried out in the tilt phase. Let's turn sideways so that the movement is more graphic. For a long time, this movement was my favorite. In this movement, there is a distinct inflation of the work of the diaphragm along its posterior bundles. an active movement that goes along the legs of the diaphragm. Now this is an extremely useful phase, so let's start. It is normal if at some point your consciousness starts to drift away. We pause. I feel that not only my voice has changed, but also my motivation. For a while more oxygen is supplied. You will feel more relaxed for a while. This is normal and natural. And finally, the last movement that I would like to demonstrate to you is the big pendulum movement. Again, I will turn sideways so that it is clear what we are doing. We inhale sequentially in the backward band and inhale in the forward band. Exhalation, as usual, is carried out somewhere in the interval between these phases. So let's get started. It is normal that breathing is quite loud during the whole process. Your task is to strive to ensure that your breath is as loud as possible, as if you are intensively trying to sniff what is happening around, or you have snot flowing and it's impossible to wipe it off with some kind of napkin, and you are drawing it inside back into your respiratory system. It is to a loud, energetic breath that we strive throughout the practice. I recommend that you perform these movements sequentially in the order that I have listed. This is the classic version. You can choose for yourself some individual exercises and do them, and you can define those places where you have special difficulties and concentrate on them. Do this practice in the morning, in the evening, before going to bed, before eating. Your only limitation is to try to make the air around you as good as possible when you breathe. Keeping the windows wide open so the room is well ventilated is really important because you breathe more intensely and air quality matters. So we have shown you a complete set of gymnastics according to Strelnikova. We recommend doing it as often as you remember about it, not necessarily all the exercises. You can do the exercises that you like, which you are currently doing. And with you was Stanislav Chernog, the author and founder of the Vector Massage and Somatics School. By liking and subscribing, you help promote the channel and spread information to a wider audience. It will also be extremely useful and interesting for us to know about your experience of how you perform breathing gymnastics. Maybe you can recommend us some other breathing exercises that you practice in your life and that bring you good results. Write us comments. You were watching the channel Vector Massage and Somatics, the channel where we teach people to be healthy, to do massage and make money from it.